Hello and welcome to The Rare Agent, where we pull back the curtain on all things real estate. We're your hosts, Christina, Mary Jo, and Murray, offering a judgment-free space for collaboration over competition. In today's episode, we're lucky to have Chris Smith, the VP and CFA of EllisDon, a company with a remarkable journey. From its humble beginnings, EllisDon has grown into a global powerhouse, navigating challenges, embracing change to become a leader in the industry. Thank you, Chris, for being on the episode today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem.
We're very excited.
I'm excited to be here.
It's kind of, we've been like talking so much before we started filming that I'm like, okay, now where do we start?
Yeah, there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, for sure.
I think first things first, can you provide our listeners with a little bit about who EllisDon is?
Well, so we covered it in the beginning, a bit of the intro, right? I think EllisDon is Canada's leading construction services company. Do you want to go into the full brief of the company?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, get into it.
How about you tell us a little bit about what you guys have done in Toronto? Give a little bit of background about who you guys are in Toronto, because I know everybody drives downtown and EllisDon sign is everywhere, but nobody really knows the background of what you do.
Even me as a realtor, I was pretty surprised when you were going through all the different projects, like the huge projects that you guys have done. So maybe other people don't really realize.
Well,
or just so used to seeing your name.
Yeah,
to be honest, it kind of always in my. I saw it twice as I drove here.
Yeah, I see it everywhere. Like literally everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, there's another one. There's another one. And now I notice it more.
Well, if you want to talk about Toronto, I mean, construction itself has gotten much more expensive. So really what that's done is it's isolated where the opportunity and where the action is in the city to where the revenue is there. So you're seeing Toronto as a city grow so rapidly because of that change in focus. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've gone through the presentation before in different venues, but EllisDon is all over, from buildings like Bay Adelaide Centre with office towers to the Ritz to the AGO. We're realigning the Don Valley River that you've heard me talk about before to build the new island community down at Villiers Island.
That one I think is on another level. I mean, I think the big one that most people don't know is the Sky Dome.
The Sky Dome, right?
The fact that you guys built the Sky Dome.
Wait, is it still called the Sky Dome?
Well, I think for today we
can
keep calling it the Sky Dome.
I think everybody recognizes the name of the Sky Dome.
I get it mixed up now.
But you guys tend to take on projects that nobody else will.
Well, it becomes a scale question where projects are now getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's only so many companies in Canada that can take on projects of that size. And of course, if you were to go into different areas, whether it's road building versus office towers versus something like Villiers Island and Toronto's waterfront, the group changes. But it has gotten more to the point where construction companies like PCL and EllisDon are the biggest in the sector.
And the most experienced.
Because
you guys have also done projects like this abroad.
Right.
Like some of your most complicated ones. I think there's one in Dubai.
Yep, in Dubai, in Middle East. There's a lot of work that's been happening internationally. There is different business practices, different ways of doing things, and different ways of getting into markets internationally. So EllisDon is growing its exposure in those markets. But as far as a pure CM comparable to what we're doing here, we have focused in Canada.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I know our office is really involved with the Arcadia project, with helping you guys with the pre-sales. So I feel from what I'm getting from my clients is that they're so much more confident knowing that you guys are developing the project, especially in the market these days, and what's happening with the economy and how things are going and some of the things that we're hearing in the news.
One thing I did like in the presentation was that, which when I was talking about pre-construction, because it's such a poignant conversation with everybody now, is that when I spoke about it, the one thing you said was that EllisDon projects are built by EllisDon. Right. That you're not going to be worried about the trades being from somewhere else, that they're subcontracted out. And like, that really resonated with me, because going out and seeing new construction that has been built in the last 2 years, you can really see the poor workmanship.
Right.
And, I really, that really resonated with me and felt really like a great point at the presentation we just heard.
It creates confidence in the buyers and in the realtors as well, because I want to make sure that my clients are taken care of. So That's a really big thing. And I think it stands out more in our economy today.
Right.
One of the things I think a lot of realtors didn't realize is that you guys actually are builders for a lot of developers.
Right.
And that's not common knowledge, you know. I think-
No, it's not. And it's actually what, if you don't mind me jumping
No,
to
go
a
ahead.
point,
Oh, no
that
problem.
where this all started. And you've heard me say it a couple times where people say EllisDon, the builder, you see the signs, you assume we're just the contractor. But the biggest part about EllisDon is we call it cradle to grave. Some people don't like that term, but we're going to stick with it. I think it's an EllisDon original, but it's always been about providing better services along the way from any node that comes out from construction. So where we've actually looked at being in development is what you may not know is that EllisDon Capital, the group that our EllisDon Developments is a portion of or part of, has been developing for 20 years. It's just been on public sector assets. So I know you've heard me talk about this before, but we take on what are called public-private partnerships. And the idea there is the government says, we're not construction experts, we're not design experts, but we want to pass that off to the people who can manage that risk the best, but we're going to have very strict requirements on the service that we get back. So we talked about Oakville Hospital as an example, where EllisDon was the developer, builder, financier, led the design team, and is now operating that hospital for the next 30 years.
And you guys have built a number of hospitals.
Right. I would say we're Canada's leading hospital builder.
I-
They're not all done in this model, but
Yeah.
it's really important to take into, I guess, the story I'm trying to put in front of you is you design a building differently when you know that in 20 years from now, if there's a mistake or if there's an issue, the workmanship is going to have a much greater emphasis because you are underwriting that risk for the longevity of that site. And that approach to construction is the essence of the cradle to grave piece that I mentioned earlier. So it's okay, you're not just building the hospital, but it's what can we do in the financing package to make it more affordable? What can we do in the operations, or what can we do in construction that will
It's
make
all-encompassing.
operations more
Yeah,
efficient?
that's what I was thinking.
So, and we were talking before we sat down here, we have an entire team of software designers that we compete with Facebook, we compete with Google to try to get the best and the brightest in to help build and digitize construction. So it's all encompassing from a construction services perspective.
And how did you guys take this global? Like, so you started in Canada, right? Like,
Mhm.
how old is EllisDon, first of all? Like, how long have you guys been around?
Well, so it'd be about 72, 73 years. How's my math?
Wow.
April Fool's Day, 1951 was the founding day.
Wow.
So it's
Okay.
been a long time.
And when did you guys, and so you started in Canada.
Right.
And then when did you guys decide to go global?
Well, EllisDon has been, we've gone to the US, we've gone international to the Middle East. So there's always been nodes that have tried to bring the EllisDon away, the cradle to grave mentality internationally.
Was there some significant challenges that you faced along the way?
It's always been, expanding globally is always going to be a challenge. Again, there's different sub-trade markets, there's different procurement models. Everything is very different. That's be no challenge there. So getting in and breaking into a new hyper-competitive market is always going to be a challenge. But it is something that EllisDon is going to continue to focus on over the next 20 years or foreseeable future, I'll say.
What was the challenge you faced going into the Middle East?
The Middle East, it's an entirely different market, right? Entirely different. You think that we know what we're doing here in Canada, which of course we do, but you take that mentality even to the US and it's entirely different. So if you can imagine, there's an even greater difference going to the Middle East. So we have the project management, the construction expertise on all of our teams. So it's how do you bring that and market that to the international community so that they can see and appreciate what your teams bring to the table. So it has been, expanding internationally is always going to be a challenge, but it's something we're committed to.
Would you partner with anybody down there, or did you guys partner with anybody to help you through the first part of it, or it strictly stayed EllisDon?
We've looked at partnering. We've talked about the Atrio project. This is Middle East, but Colombia and Bogota. So that was a piece where we've been able to come in and say, okay, here's the expertise that our construction teams have in Canada, and here's how we can help you in your project here. And that was very well received. So partnering is a key part of the strategy.
Okay.
And do your workers go there, or do you hire talent in, like, did you hire people in Colombia, or did you bring people from Canada there to work on
both.
it? Both.
And there's always, EllisDon's such a big company. If you use the Bogota example, you announce, we're going to Bogota. Anybody want to go manage a site there? I would think that
a lot of people
and you'll
would be
usually have
excited.
someone that says, either I have family there or I'm from there, or I'd love to do it. So it's always, you got to tap into your existing network and maximize the best you can.
Yeah, I would think like lots of people, like if you have a huge force, like a lot of people would want to go. Warmer weather, a new experience.
That kind of makes me, like, when I was reading about your company, and even at the first presentation I went to, you guys mentioned that EllisDon was 100% employee owned.
Right.
When did that decision come about, and how did you guys decide to make that decision? Because it's a big one.
Well, it is, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of school here, because a lot of this was done. It was
pre-Christmas,
way before we did. So they should be the ones. My dad and his siblings should be the ones to comment on it. But
your parents, your family worked in the business as well.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So EllisDon, Don was my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
And I think him and his brother, Dave Ellis Smith, I think shared a bottle of wine one night and decided to put their names together. And that's EllisDon as we know it.
Oh, so you
today.
walked right into EllisDon, and have you been working there I guess you've been working there for a long time.
Well, it's trickier than that, but kind of a funny story. As I'm sure everyone's aware, and I don't think, again, this is speaking out of school either, family companies and doing business with family is always a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think my dad, and he's open about this, so my dad and my grandfather never actually had the world's greatest working relationship. I think it was a real challenge for a long time. So for me, I never wanted to be part of something like that, like have the risk of, losing my dad as a friend or having a challenging issue there. So I did everything away from EllisDon. I went down the heavy finance route, ended up working in the capital markets on Bay Street for a few years. But as my career progressed, I got closer and closer to EllisDon and closer to construction, to the point where for me,
it's in your blood.
Well, that's the thing. Right? You go home for the holidays and you talk about hospitals and condo buildings or whatever.
Yeah, but you could bring a different perspective to it, I think. If you worked outside of them, and you can come back and say, well, actually, I learned about this. And
yeah. Well, I ended up in advisory and management consulting and in real estate and infrastructure.
Okay.
So I was very close to it. And then at the end of the day, I wanted to be involved where you are in the game. You're not just advising on it. You have a project that you're in charge of. So it was really at the time, in my mind, working for EllisDon or working for what I thought was our biggest competitor, or is our biggest competitor, which EllisDon Capital, which is a company called Plenary. So I did the obvious thing and I interviewed at Plenary.
I wasn't expecting that.
How did your family find out?
Well, so it was funny. I said, I got an interview at Plenary, and I think there was some F-bombs dropped and some confusion. I don't think I appreciated at the time that what it would appear to be. I mean, for me, I was going off my own track, doing my own thing. Sorry, I almost hit you in the face. And it was probably odd Christmas that year. And then I was at EllisDon shortly after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you proved yourself.
That wasn't the intent. It was literally just this is the path that I was
trying
on.
to do your own thing.
Yeah.
It's almost better that way, I think. It probably worked out better for you because you could appreciate it more if you weren't in there the whole time.
Yeah. No, if you had asked me early on in my career I would have ended up at EllisDon, I probably would have said no.
Yeah.
But it's
most
been
of
great,
us, we were
obviously.
like, no. Like you can always fight your, any family business. You're like, absolutely not. I'm going in my own way. And then somehow you end up coming back.
Right.
When the economy changes the way that it has, and things are a little bit challenging in different ways, like you mentioned, construction cost.
Right.
Was there anything that you guys had to do that really pivoted what you were doing before, like your previous model? Did you feel like there was anything, like any other kind of direction you had to go?
Wait, so you're talking EllisDon proper?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for a company like EllisDon, there's so many different divisions. I mean, I still learn about new things we're doing almost on a weekly basis, I find. But when the economy shifts, so does the investment.
Mhm.
So if it's coming from the public sector, if it's coming from the private sector, you won't see it as the company performs. It'll be a steady growth, you could call it, but underneath, you'll see big shifts, right?
Mhm.
So you'll see lots of public investment during tougher times, and then that shifts away, and then you'll see great private investment in boom times. So you'll see that shift back and forth.
Well, you guys have been through it a lot for 70 years. I
Yeah.
mean, you've sort of ridden it out.
Well, the people at EllisDon that have been there for a very long time.
Not
really,
you. Not you
really-
personally. I mean,
no,
EllisDon and you know.
no, there's people that have been there for decades and decades and decades that have seen the ups and downs and of some of these great big projects that.
So how do you guys manage that then? If everybody's 100%, owned, like it's 100% owned by the employees, how does
Right.
how does that work?
Well, it's just like any other company, right? And
Not really.
Well, in the sense that there's a board of directors.
Yeah.
The board of directors, the CEO reports to the board of directors. There's a strategy that's put in place, like that governance model, whether it's owned by public shares or owned by the employees. As far as the governance is in place, you try to make it as clean or replicate a public structure in that sense.
Yeah.
But then you also don't have, as far as a public company, you don't have as much emphasis on the Q1 report. You're able to actually put a strategy in place that is a
Well,
long
everybody's
time.
invested,
Right.
right? Which
When
I
you-
would think is the difference.
Yeah, well, those are two different things. If you're talking about how it's managed, you want to put as much of the proper governance in place, just like it was under the microscope of a public company. And again, not speaking out of school, this is between Jeff Keir and the rest of the management team, of course. But when you have employee ownership and you have somebody on site that knows when the project does well that they're going to share in the profit, that really changes, or should really change, your attitude as somebody working on a site. So I think that's the emphasis.
Yeah,
that was
like
put on it.
generally they would care a little bit more about it,
Right,
like making sure the work gets done versus somebody who just comes in and checks out.
right. You're no longer working for the man. You're working for you, and you're working for your colleagues, and
Yeah,
that's how it should be.
If it all does well, we all do well, like together. Like if
Right.
the project's built, and
It's
we
the
all-
first time I've ever heard of that in a construction company. I've never heard of them being run like that, which I think is amazing.
Right,
Everybody cares about what's actually being done. And then moving through everything else, when you move into something like Arcadia, I think that translates back to our clients who can appreciate the fact that the work being done is being done by people who actually care because they actually have a stake
right,
in the company.
right. And it all boils down to every aspect of it. That simple thought.
Yeah.
Sit there and you go, well, I don't need, like, if even the two of you, you're partners, right? You don't need to know that, is she doing her job? Are you doing your job? Because you're partners together. And if it doesn't work,
Yeah.
like it's
It's
going
on
to it's
both
going to
of us.
impact you
Yeah.
directly. So
Yeah.
You don't-
Everybody's got 2 feet in.
right.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
So speaking of Arcadia, what excites you most about this project?
The coolest thing for me is you sit there and we looked at it. Everybody's been talking about TOD, the original transit-oriented development, and then they rebranded it. TOC was the common term. But you sit there and if you were to sit back and we were to talk about something and say, listen, we've got a project that you guys are going to sell, and it's going to have access to downtown by a GO train within 20 minutes. You're going to get to Pearson Airport in 15 minutes. You're going to be able to have bus connections, TTC connections. And we were going to put all this together. You would sit there and look at me and say, where around Union are you building this? Because there's no space. So when you look at Arcadia, you sit there and you go, wait a minute. This is one of the only nodes in the city that has this type of connectivity. And then now it's almost even eerie when you go and you stand at Dundas and Bloor, because you look around and the city has spent a lot of money, getting the transit up to snuff, or adding to it, I should say, and realigning the roads to make it a more pedestrian-oriented community. But the public investment is now just being put in. So you've got these big plots of land, greenfield, call it land, open, right in this huge node. So
Which,
you
for
can,
anybody listening, it's that Bloor and Kipling area.
right, Bloor and Kipling area.
Yeah.
So if you go and you stand there now, it almost looks like an empty space. But the projects that are coming, it's going to be completely unrecognizable.
Yeah.
You could throw a football across that whole area right now, and it's going to be massive in 10 years.
Yeah, there's a massive revitalization, which has been going on really the past 5 years, because we've actually been selling in that neighborhood
Right.
for the past little while pre-pandemic. And we've seen the development happening around 5 Points
Right.
and what they were doing to try and make it more accessible. And then you guys come along and you start talking about this new pre-construction project that you're doing and how much more it's going to change, and the whole master plan community idea.
Right.
And really at a time when we are at a shortage, right? We need more stuff like this. There's so many people coming into the country
Right.
and there's nowhere to go, and they need the ability to get to work without having to drive,
Right.
right?
Well, and that to go to your question of what makes it so exciting for me is it's probably, in my opinion, obviously, is one of the only areas in the city that's going to see completely disproportional growth compared to what else is happening, right? Everybody, you hear a lot of the marketing saying it's a transit-oriented development with maybe a bus stop, maybe one subway station. This has everything there at once.
It's a
And
massive hub.
you've got a 550, approximately 1,000 square foot community center that's going to come. There's residential developments all over the place. So as far as areas of the city that will look completely unrecognizable 10 years from now, I'd say this is the one spot where you're going to see the most dramatic change. So having a master plan community like Arcadia being the thin edge of the wedge in that node is really exciting. Obviously something we're very happy for.
What made EllisDon get into actually like starting to build a condo of their own, being, the builder plus the developer? Like what got you to this
This is the
point?
first time you guys
Yeah.
have done that kind of project, right? Normally,
Well,
I know you've done it for hospitals.
We've done them for hospitals. We
Yeah.
are 36 Zora is another project that we're a part of. But the initial idea for it came out where you heard me use the term TOD. The government of Ontario had come out with this program that was called TOD, which ended up being a real estate project that was procured. I need some sip of my water here. Procured through what felt and looked and smelled like an infrastructure deal. So we had clients that were coming to us saying, we don't know what this is, but we want to chase it, and you should partner with us. So we said, terrific, let's go. So that initial format has morphed over the years, and you're starting to see Modern TO is a new program that the city's coming out with that is going to involve them selling off city-owned land into residential development. So that's another offshoot of it. There's
In
the
that
housing
area?
This is just downtown Toronto. I think they have, that's a whole conversation on its own, but I think they have 8 different projects coming down the line.
Because they were selling off government houses like before, which we've been a part of, but I haven't heard about this. This is new.
Yeah, no, it's new, but I guess to answer your question was that we had clients asking us, we need a partner to build on this. It's sort of an infrastructure deal. It has real estate components to it. Let's go after it together. And that was the big aha moment for us, where we said we can provide better service to our clients by also being involved in development projects on the private side. So that was the onus. That was in about 2015, and since then we've been growing ever since. So that was the initial moment that got us into it. We've been growing since then.
So 2015. So that's from
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. It's taken you guys to, just so people know what it takes to put together a pre-construction project.
Right.
Like it's not an overnight thing. For
No,
sure.
there's a lot to it, and I mean, a lot of our work is focused on public procurement, which a lot of these were at the time. So they were a new program. There was a lot of lessons to be learned from the private side and the public side on how you can put these things together. So you bid, you've lost some other, like there's a runway to get going.
What's your favorite part of this job?
Of this job?
Yeah, I want to ask about the bidding, so you answer that question first.
Well, we talked about this earlier on. I started my career on heavy finance, so a lot of it was Excel and financial models. And
You like Excel?
I love Excel.
Oh my
I'm an
God.
Excel junkie at heart.
What about, okay.
He goes to the conventions.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The Excel conventions. There's 6 courses on Excel. Like, and I can't even begin to like, it's a lot.
I love it. I mean, now try
The things that you can do with it. I know I'm going
It's
off
like
on a
coding,
tangent here,
but
but like,
it's
yeah,
like,
it's
Yeah,
really
but
good.
so for me, it was always seeing what goes into a financial model and turning it into something real. So that part of the job is just incredible, because you're not just making a assumption in a model anymore, changing a cell, changing a line item, changing a pro forma. You're building something that's people are going to be in and relying on for the next 30, 50, 80 years. So that's the coolest part of the job for me. And it's a very big change from, I guess, where I started my career and why I made the jump and why I appreciate it so much more.
See, that's the thing I really enjoy about commercial in general, just what you can do with land and how you can change it and what it can turn into over a long period of time.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that's always she's always rolling her eyes at me, because that's the thing that excites me.
I love the community aspect of Arcadia. I love that it's going to be so accessible, and it's kind of simplifying your life. And I think since COVID, that's been really important, to be able to have quality of life and not be just sitting in your car for hours driving from one place to another. But there's also a sustainability aspect of it that I really like. So can you tell us more about that?
Well, sustainability is something that I think even as an industry, everybody's talking about it, but it becomes much more of a challenge when you try to implement it.
Exactly.
So you can talk about EllisDon more broadly, getting the industry to actually talk about it and have everybody aware and seeing what's coming. Like, the regulations are getting much more strict. And if you're not aware of that, you're going to get left behind. Your projects are going to be in trouble. But
regulations around sustainability?
Right.
Okay.
And embodied carbon and emissions from buildings. Like, there's all this stuff that's coming that people don't really know about. So part of what we're doing as an industry, as a company participant in the industry, is getting everybody talking about it so that we're at least rowing in the same direction, right? People aren't aware of some of the challenges of getting steel or concrete that doesn't have or you could lower the embodied carbon content compared to what they're doing now. If they're not focused on it, how are we going to focus on it? We as a builder, we're going to you as the subtrade market and bidding from you. But if we're not addressing your problems, then how is that going to impact the sustainability of the industry? So it's a big portion of what we're doing, and we're looking and using Arcadia as an opportunity to sit there and say, okay, well, what technologies do we have? What can we implement here that will work? Because they're not going to work everywhere, right? So the geothermal technology is one that we're putting in place for Arcadia, which is great.
That's a big one.
Right. And it's something that's really starting to gain traction in the industry, which is terrific. And you're going to start to see it much, much more.
I've never seen it in a building. Like, I've seen it in individual houses. Right. And that was very forward thinking because it was very expensive to do.
Right.
But now to see you guys doing it, and you're not doing it and charging more to the customer, which I think people should appreciate, because we've seen lots of pre-construction out there, and the kind of value that you guys are offering in terms of sustainability, which is always much more expensive, generally speaking, we just don't see in the average construction. Like, it's just not, and usually if you do see it, like I've sold at Delisle, I've sold at, some pretty expensive projects. They don't offer it unless you pay for it.
Right.
Right. And for you guys, it's just standard.
Right.
And I think that's incredibly impressive.
For people who are not in this world, what is geothermal?
So I need to put this on the table. I'm not an engineer. I love listening to the people that know the stuff much better than I do.
Sorry, we're trying to cover so many things.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
No, it's just because I've had comments before saying, like, you need to explain those words, because we like sometimes it's just higher level than the average listener. So if a synopsis.
I know enough. I needed to preface it. So
okay, good.
The contractor drills massive tubes and tunnels or wells, they're called, into the ground, and you end up with the way they call it a battery. Okay. So for something like in the summer, below the subsurface is much colder. So you can take the heat from the building and you pump it through these tubes, and going down deep cools the heat and is able to then save the building from having to recycle that power use any energy to get that in line on their own. And in the winter, you do it vice versa. So I know that's a very, very high level, and the engineers somewhere are probably rolling their eyes. But as long as you manage it properly, which is a key part, you can recycle the heat and the cool coming out of a building, and you can have a better, more efficient building by using that type of a technology.
Yeah, using less energy. Like it's,
Right.
I've seen it in houses.
I
like
bought a
said.
pre-construction that has geothermal. And
Oh, do they have it?
Yeah, and I wasn't 100% sure what was happening, but I bought it.
The long-
Sounded good.
Yeah,
Sounded good.
Sounded like great. I was like, yeah, this is going to sustain over 100 years. I'm like, I'm involved. I'm interested.
Well, it's the long and short of
Yeah.
using the energy in the earth and the building and having them interact on an inverse basis to save power.
But the kind of engineering you're going to have to use to do something on such a large scale is
Oh, yeah.
not something I don't think we see very often.
Right.
Not
But
yet. Not yet,
it's-
anyway.
It's one of the first new technologies that's really starting to take off in the industry. So I do think you're going to start to see it more and more. And even on a scale basis, it ends up making it more efficient.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something we could ask someone else, but how far deeper do you have to drill for this type of energy?
I'm sure there's a very detailed answer from an engineer, but I'd imagine the bigger it is, the deeper it goes.
Because I was thinking with the garages and whatnot, and then I was listening about that one building that's not happening. How they were saying they're going to go 10 stories underground and how complicated that is. So I was just wondering, like, how far can you go? But
You need some pretty smart
you can drill-
engineers on
you
that.
can drill pretty deep.
pretty deep.
So
So you guys are really involved in your communities with like surrounding your projects. How does the company prioritize community engagement, and what are impactful community initiatives you're involved in?
well, EllisDon is such a big company, so the levels of community engagement go from relationships with trade organizations to make sure that you're helping them attract more people to the industry, all the way to I forget the name now, but we just announced a new program where for every new hire, we're going to plant a tree. Right. So it's something from as small as that to obviously having very strong relationships with all the different trade organizations in the area. And then you look at something like Arcadia District, being able to give back to kids playing sports is always something that's been great to us. So I know we're sponsoring the local hockey teams there for this season
In the area?
in the area.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that's always something you can go on the smaller levels to all the way to
And how do people know about that?
well, it's all coming out now. I don't think we've announced it yet. So
No, now you did.
Now we did. So that'll be coming out soon, and it'll be on the jerseys, and hopefully we can go to a few of the games. But
And you guys also have a daycare being built into Arcadia,
yes, there is.
right? For 70 kids, I
I
think
think it'd
it
be
was.
about 90.
90 kids, which, I mean, that's, again, huge.
Well, the piece that what we like so much about Arcadia, and I know you were talking about community, and I mean, life's getting more and more expensive. So what we wanted to do, what we have done is we programmed it in a way that if you're buying your unit at Arcadia, if you're selling a unit at Arcadia, we wanted it to be to look at it and say, well, what are you getting with your price tag? You could go and buy from another developer, but at least at Arcadia, you're going to have a full gym that will be good enough that someone who is actually a fitness nut will sit there and say, oh, I don't need to go to my Good Life anymore because this was actually designed and is actually big enough for me to get out of it what I want.
Sold.
Yeah, that's huge.
So, and
That's
then you're
huge.
sitting there and
Yeah.
there's two sides to the coin, right? Either you're an end user saying, okay, I'm buying my condo, I'm getting the gym, I'm getting a full co-working space. If I have kids, I have daycare downstairs. I don't know if you have kids, but I wish I had a daycare downstairs. It would make my life and my wife's life so much easier. But again, it's all of this amenity space that you're getting with
It's
your
simplifying
purchase.
people's lives in general. Like, you know,
Right.
it's like all encompassing again. So let's
Creating
say,
a lifestyle.
Well, and that's
Yeah,
the end user. But if you are somebody who's going to buy it as a renter, or sorry, as a
investor.
landlord, and you're going to have somebody who's going to be renting it from you, your ability to garner a higher rent
because of the services offered.
will be part of that.
Yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
wanted to look at it from two angles to say, what at the end of the day, when this is built and somebody's saying, what am I getting when I'm living at this place? What you're paying for with your mortgage or what you're paying for with
your
your
maintenance
rent
fees.
brings you so much more. So the utility, the value is so much higher. And that was a key portion for us. I mean, with the 4 buildings, we could have done, the cookie cutter amenities crappy small gym at one, crappy small gym at two, crappy gym. So we said, okay, well, no, if we've got the scale here, let's actually make an amenity package that you're going to want that's going to differentiate your project from other opportunities out there.
Well, and you guys you're credible, which is huge because I've bought lots of pre-construction myself. And by the time the project has been completed, it's not the project that I purchased.
Right.
So, and I think that's super important for people to know when you know that, okay, you guys are fully invested in the company because you're all 100% owners. You care about the end product probably more than the average builder.
Right.
And then having all of these things available to you, covered in your maintenance fees because the maintenance fees tend to be quite high.
Right.
So people will be like, okay, well, if I'm paying, so much per square foot for this property, what am I actually paying for?
What am I getting?
It makes the value kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The investment and the value.
Right?
Well, when I'm renting out landlords' units, tenants will say like, oh, can I see the gym? Can I see the amenities? Because they factor that into their rent. Like, oh, now I don't need a gym membership because I'm here. So you can charge more for it. And I agree with you on that. And I think if it's a community, people will be flocking to live there because then it's just going to create its own
and
lifestyle.
accessibility.
Yeah.
Right? It's accessible. It's got, your daycare. It's got your parks. Like it's, everything. And then you don't need a car, which is huge right now, right? Because driving anywhere in Toronto, as we all know,
Is a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. It's disaster.
So looking ahead, of course, Arcadia is huge, but what else is on the future horizons for EllisDon?
Well, I mean, we're all very aware that we are in a massive housing shortage right now. I follow actually the economist, I think you can call him that, Daniel.
Daniel Foch, yeah.
Foch, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I was shying away from his last name. So
I used to call him Daniel Fox. Sorry, Daniel. Daniel Foch.
where he just spitting out these stats, and if he was here, I'd ask him. But the stat he put out the other day was, I think, 4.7 people for every house that we're building. So you sit there and you say, okay, Canada is growing obviously at this huge rate, and Toronto's growing at this huge rate.
Where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go? And we viewed it as saying, okay, well, if we need to try to be involved in the solution, what can we do? Which brings us to Arcadia, which is obviously even referring it to a drop in the bucket is probably not even close, right? There's just such a need for more homes.
Well, and an affordable need. And that's the other thing. Like you guys really paid attention to the price point. Right. For where we are in the market right now, like I feel like you guys did a really good job with the way that you priced it, knowing where we're at, in the market and how many people are coming and what people can actually afford.
And paying attention to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Right. So the demand is there.
Yeah.
It's just affordability that seems to be an issue because of the interest rates.
Right.
So kind of taking care of that situation is actually providing the supply that is needed and the community. So like you said, Christina, you can kind of cut out some of your expenses because it's already being provided for there.
Well, that was again, the whole point of, we call it the Arcadia Club, was putting that amenity package together. Was we said, well, the condos cost a certain amount to build, so we need to make it affordable, but it needs to work.
Yeah.
So how can we make what you're getting, the value that comes with your purchase, that much better?
And how many units is it in total? I think it's 1,400, like the whole master plan community.
It'd be in that neighborhood, yeah.
1,400 units coming to Bloor and Kipling.
I mean, Arcadia residences.
Very
Arcadia
forward
residences.
thinking.
Right, let's do some of the fun stuff. Let's get to know Chris. I have 3 questions and they're all the same every week. What is your favorite GTA neighborhood?
Well, that's an easy
It's
one.
Bloor and Kipling.
It's Bloor and Kipling. Come on, like you got to look at it and sit there. We had events at our sales center this weekend, but you drive through there and you can sit there and say, there's going to be millions of square feet new built here in 5 years.
I've walked the site.
It's insane.
It's massive. And what the vision is, and you can go to the sales center, which is, what is the address of the sales
At
center?
375 Munster. It's right across the street from where the site will be.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to go and actually see a visual of what the model looks like, and you can walk the site, and you guys actually have a video showing, like you have virtual videos pretty much showing what it's going to look like, right?
Right. We've got all the renderings, all the videos.
I brought my
there.
son. I brought my son into the sales center as well.
No, I had my son there too.
They had lots of donuts. Lots of donuts.
That was the problem.
AJ's happy.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Where you see a lot of developers have the plastic shields around their scale models.
Yeah.
I realize now that we need one. My son almost ripped off the balcony on the 30th floor.
Yeah.
But it's going to be such a cool neighborhood to be a part of because you're going to see such dramatic change. And hopefully, I know our construction team is bidding on the Civic Center right across the street. So hopefully we will be building the Civic Center. There's a Housing Now site that's going in as well, and Arcadia District that we're bidding. So it's
It's all planned to be built in the next 5 years.
That's the plan, right?
Including the Civic Center?
Including the Civic Center.
Wow.
Transformation.
I don't know if it'll be finished, but it will be under construction hopefully in a very short period of time.
And what will be at the Civic Center?
So
What's the plan for it?
They're going to have a community center. There's going to be another daycare. There's going to be, you think of everything that's in the Etobicoke Civic Center now, it'll be that plus all these other community benefits that are coming into place. So it's a huge project that's going to be there. And you can think of, I think we're tracking 35 other projects within about a 2-kilometer radius. So the growth in that neighborhood is going to be substantial. And to sit there now and look at it and see it as just flat and being able to see all the way across, it's crazy to think of what's going to be there.
And to imagine also so getting in now at the prices that you can now versus 5 years from now, what it'll likely be when the market turns back and things are a bit more normalized. Because I don't think people can think that far ahead sometimes.
Well, if you look at even, I wish I had the images with me, but Mississauga City Center, Vaughan, all these neighborhoods were complete low-rise industrial neighborhoods, and then they were targeted by the government for growth, and you've just seen them explode. And you've seen the entry price now compared to what it was. Is crazy. So to have that type of a market within 15 minutes of downtown Toronto is wild for me. So that's why it's my favorite neighborhood, and obviously why we're heavily involved with it.
Do you think it's going to be similar to Liberty Village?
In what sense?
It just kind of it's giving me a Liberty Village vibe. No, because there's so many, there's everything there. You can basically go to Liberty Village, live there, and not even have to leave.
You could work everywhere, work there.
You can do everything.
Yeah, you can do everything.
It's not as accessible as what you're talking about.
That was going to be my only point. So there is obviously the exhibition train is stop is great to have by Liberty, but I would imagine if you could add, and now I'm just repeating myself, but you get subway station, Mississauga bus, Toronto bus, and go, and putting it right in the middle.
Didn't you guys build Kipling Station?
We built yeah.
What's your favorite go-to meal on the road?
Oh, on the road?
Usually
my weak spot is shawarma. If I see a shawarma spot,
shawarma's a big one on the show.
Those are my people.
Yeah, the shawarma's
a mixed shawarma. Yeah.
Well, if you could find good shawarma, there's a place by our office that makes it, and if I forget my lunch,
you gotta find a good one though. You gotta find a good one.
My favorite is in Vaughan, believe it or not.
I'm the same way. I was in Port Credit yesterday, and I was driving, and I saw shawarma on the side of the road, because it was Hero Burger or I don't know, whatever. And I'm
it's still good for you. It's not
that's the idea.
Yes, it's good for you. It's good for you. We're gonna keep telling ourselves
all the garlic sauce and
tahini,
and the thin bread. That's the best. I like that.
Well, no, the places by our office. So our office is in Mississauga, and there's these couple places that make all their own bread.
That's amazing.
So good.
It's completely unfair because you just rubber arm, right?
But I mean, think about it. It's just being roasted on that spit, right? And then the pita bread's not as unhealthy as regular. This is my rationalization. And then
we're all going to get shawarma after this.
We're going. What's the name of that place again?
Right.
I love shawarma.
Not bad.
Absolutely. It's protein good, salad good, bread good.
And once you get 3 goods in a row, you feel pretty.
You're sold. Quality.
And in one word, what would make, in your opinion, a developer rare?
Make a developer rare. Ooh, responsibility, maybe.
I like that.
On the fly. That's good.
Thank you.
Boom. Drop the mic.
I thought I was going to get an ability to explain myself, and then you just curtail it to one word like that.
Yeah, you can explain yourself.
I was like, let's switch it up. Let's just try to be.
Well, I was kind of iffy about that one word, but you nailed it.
You nailed it. You totally nailed it.
Yeah.
There you go. I'll stick with my answer.
Yeah.
Feeling confident.
That's it. You're out. Walk away. You made a good one. George Costanza it. And just get out of the room.
Don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Right back to Seinfeld.
Whenever that happens, I just think of that scene. Where it's like
I think of scenes in Seinfeld on a daily basis.
all the time.
I think
My
you can
life is
relate
like
pretty much
Seinfeld.
anything to Seinfeld.
It's true.
Absolutely.
Pretty much anything and everything, which made that show so good.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Well, mine's Modern Family.
Modern Family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that actually.
I just started watching Veep, which is completely different.
And that's with
Elaine, Elaine,
hyphenated.
Julia
Louis
Louis-Dreyfus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And she's
even know
just
who
as
that is.
bonkers in that show as she was in Seinfeld.
Is it good? So you recommend it?
So far, so good. She's the vice president, and she's completely overlooked, and she's constantly making stupid mistakes.
Cool.
So it's actually quite funny. It's
Oh,
it's
good.
a fun show to watch.
Got to find some good TV.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and let us know everything about EllisDon. Well, not everything, but a lot of things that we didn't know.
Well, people know a little bit more about who you are and the latest project you guys are involved in called Arcadia, located at Bloor and Kipling. And for more information about the sales office, it's also located at, sorry, can you remind me of the address?
375 Munster.
Thank you.
So please come see us. We'll have lots of donuts.
Lots of donuts.
And we'll have everything you need to come see what's coming.
Amazing.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.